The world is getting hotter, coastlines are shrinking, deserts are growing, and entire nations are facing a future of scarcity and chaos. It's a crisis, a catastrophe, well, you've seen the news. But what if I told you that while everyone else is panicking, one country is quietly playing the long game? A country that looked at the terrifying charts of global warming, nodded politely, and said, "Interesting, how can we make this work for us?" That's right. Today we're talking about Canada, the country famous for apologies, maple syrup, and weaponized politeness, and how it might be using climate change and a radical immigration strategy to set itself up as the superpower of the 22nd century. Let's be clear, climate change is overwhelmingly bad, but if you have to find a silver lining, it helps to be a gigantic frozen country. Canada is warming at nearly double the global average, and in the Arctic, it's warming at nearly 4 times the rate. For most countries, that's a death sentence. For Canada, it's a real estate boom. Studies project that as the planet warms, Canada could gain a staggering 4.2 million square kilometers of new arable land. That's like adding another India to its farmable territory. Regions once locked in permafrost could become suitable for growing crops like wheat, corn, and potatoes. The Great White North could become the Great Green Breadbasket. And it's not just about farming. As the Arctic ice melts, it unlocks a treasure chest of resources. The region holds some of the world's largest remaining untapped reserves of oil and natural gas, not to mention vast mineral wealth. The legendary Northwest Passage, a frozen-over dream for centuries, is becoming a viable shipping lane, potentially slashing global trade routes. Now, this isn't a perfect paradise plan. Thawing permafrost is a nightmare for infrastructure, new pests are showing up uninvited, and a lot of that new farmland is sitting on top of the Canadian Shield, which has all the soil quality of a bowling ball. But the potential is undeniable. Canada has been dealt a surprisingly good hand in the climate change casino. There's just one tiny problem. Who is going to farm all this new land, mine these minerals, and staff these new shipping ports? Canada is the second largest country on Earth by landmass, but its population is smaller than California's. And like many Western nations, its population is aging and its birth rate is low, around 1.3 births per woman, well below what's needed to keep the population stable. Without a massive influx of people, Canada's demographic future looks less like a booming superpower and more like a giant empty retirement home with great scenery. There won't be enough workers to power the economy, let alone pay the taxes needed for pensions and healthcare. So, you have this incredible once-in-a-civilization opportunity opening up in the north and a demographic cliff looming in the south. What do? Well, if you're Canada, you launch one of the most ambitious demographic experiments in modern history. You open the doors wide. While other countries were building walls and tightening restrictions, Canada dramatically ramped up its immigration targets. The plan was to hit a staggering 500,000 new permanent residents per year by 2025. That's like adding the entire population of Halifax every single year. The official reason? To fill labor shortages and grow the economy. And that's true. But when you look at the sheer scale of the numbers and you place it next to the map of all that newly habitable land, it starts to look less like a short-term economic fix and more like a long-term geopolitical strategy. This is a plan to build a nation, to import human capital on a scale rarely seen, with a system that prioritizes younger, skilled, and educated workers who can contribute for decades to come. Of course, a plan this big is bound to hit a few bumps, or in Canada's case, a few giant economy-sized potholes. Because here's what happens when you invite 500,000 people to a party every year, but forget to build a bigger house. The short-term results of Canada's open-door policy have been messy. A severe housing crisis has sent rent and home prices into the stratosphere. The influx of people has outpaced job growth, leading to rising unemployment, especially for newcomers who face an unemployment rate more than double that of native-born Canadians. Social services are strained, and for the first time in decades, a majority of Canadians started to feel that immigration levels were too high. It looks like a policy failure, a classic case of a government biting off more than it can chew. And in response, they've recently had to tap the brakes, reducing targets and capping the number of temporary residents to ease the pressure. But what if this short-term pain isn't a failure of the plan? What if it's just a very unpleasant, very expensive part of it? Because the real payoff from this massive investment in people isn't meant to come from this generation at all. The secret to Canada's long-term plan isn't the immigrants who arrive today, it's their children. First-generation immigrants often face a tough road. They struggle with getting their foreign credentials recognized, language barriers, and finding work that matches their skills. Their economic performance has, in recent decades, often lagged behind those born in Canada. But the story of the second generation, the children of immigrants who are born and educated in Canada, is completely different. Study after study shows that second-generation Canadians are an economic powerhouse. They outperform children of Canadian-born parents in educational attainment, with 41% holding university degrees compared to just 24% of the third-plus generation. They have higher average incomes and are more likely to start businesses in high-skilled sectors. They have the cultural knowledge and networks of their parents, combined with a Canadian education and fluency in the language. They are, in essence, the ultimate return on investment. This isn't about exploiting the first generation, it's about creating the foundation for the second and third. By absorbing the short-term costs of housing shortages and strained services, Canada is building the human capital it will need to become the resource and agricultural superpower of a warmer 21st century. It's a multi-generational play for the future. So, is Canada's grand strategy a stroke of genius or a reckless gamble? The truth is, it's probably both. The country is navigating a turbulent present with very real consequences for millions of people, all in the hope of securing a prosperous and stable future. They are betting that the long-term payoff of a larger, younger, and highly skilled population will be worth the short-term pain. They're turning the global crisis of climate change into a national opportunity, and they're building a new generation of Canadians to seize it. It's a bold, controversial, and deeply Canadian plan. Quiet, ambitious, and planned out decades in advance. While the rest of the world is playing checkers with the crises of today, Canada might just be playing 4D chess for the world of tomorrow.